Snake.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of my top 5. My name is HGD Rules 0001 and in this particular edition I'd like to go over with you my top 5 moments from the Metal Gear or Metal Gear Solid franchise. It's a video game series by the Japanese company Konami and created by video game genius, story genius Mr. Hideo Kojima. I will go through your usual 5 to 1 moments, and quite frankly there's more moments in extras slash additions slash others than in any other video, so I'm going to get on with it. Number 5 is involved with Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, Peace Walker and Metal Gear Solid 4 so far, and it's using CQC. Now if you're an undercover agent for whatever organisation and the way to infiltrate a facility or a place, the best way to do it is stealthily, and you know it's the best way to take down an enemy soldier or an enemy of any description is to take them out silently. Now if you don't have a suppressed firearm, the best way to do it is by using close combat, which CQC stands for close quarters combat, and it's just one of those things where you can just creep up behind a soldier enemy and just quickly grab them, put them out, choke them to the extent where they fall down unconscious. Now the main part of Metal Gear Solid is to move about stealthily and and all that sort of business. It is said at the end of every Metal Gear game that you get a higher score, so to speak, a higher rank if you don't kill. So using CQC to even just choke to unconscious degree, or in later games like CQC, what I've just told you about, using CQC to actually throw your opponent down, and 9 times out of 10 they will get knocked out, and that's one of the best things about Metal Gear. Number 4. The epic final battle in Metal Gear Solid 4. What do I have to say? It's a fight on the top of an observation deck of Outer Haven in Metal Gear Solid 4 between Old Snake and Liquid Ocelot. Now quite frankly this particular battle is one of the best boss battles in video games, and quite frankly could be made into a movie just by itself. It's that good. You play as Old Snake up against Liquid Ocelot, and you have gone through the game and you're thinking it's all over, and yet you get, your character's basically 3/4 dead after what you've had to do in that specific level, and you have to have one more fight. But the best thing about it is that you've got the music, or one of the main pieces of music from each of the preceding games, going through your ears as you fight, and it's a fist fight. There's no weapons, there's no knives, there's no anything. It's just basically a fist fight to the end, and it's that good. I mean, it's as you go through different stages of the fight, you get a different piece of music from a different game, and it gets to the end where they can barely stand, and throwing a punch requires so much effort from both individuals, and the final blow nearly takes it all out of them. you've got to see it to believe it, and it's one of those moments in video games and in entertainment in general that should be remembered for what it is, and that's bloody brilliant. Number three is also from Metal Gear Solid 4. It's the battle between the two Metal Gears at the end of level 4, Rex versus Ray. Now, those individuals that have watched this video are fans of Metal Gear Solid, there's no doubt about it, and the epicness of this battle is off the charts, so to speak, because of the fact you spent the majority of Metal Gear Solid 1 all the way back in 1998 to stop the walking tank Metal Gear Rex from launching a nuclear missile. Now that's fair enough, but you finally, after almost 20 years, you finally get to pilot one of these things yourself, and to use the missiles, the machine guns, the water cannons and things like that. To finally use them was a breath of fresh air in the game. And the battle is that if you defeat this opponent, the world will be saved. And just the battle itself, getting the battle itself, is one of those moments where you have to sit back and think, yeah, we're the boss character from one game. And speaking of said boss, my second favourite moment in Metal Gear is actually when Metal Gear Rex starts to move in Metal Gear Solid 1. It's, you've been going up against it. The story is you're inserting special key cards to stop the launch of this thing, and what eventually actually happens is that you've been inputting the key cards to activate it. Your character's unaware of this time, and if you haven't played it, it's absolutely mind-boggling. This thing hasn't moved all game because they're waiting for a deadline, and all they're waiting for really is for you to activate it. Once you've activated it, you've got to fight it. And compared to sizes, you're about that big, and you're fighting something that's that big, and you still whip its ass. It's brilliant. And my favourite moment in Metal Gear Solid history, number 1, is actually the story of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is a prequel game, because all throughout the first 4 games in the franchise, the original 8-bit Metal Gear, the original 8-bit Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2, you've heard about this character. I mean, in the first 2 8-bit games you play against him. In the next 2 games you hear about this character, mythical character called Big Boss, and you find out the beginnings of Big Boss. You play as Big Boss, but in his younger days in Metal Gear Solid 3. And it's not until your right eye gets shot out by a bullet that you realise you are not playing as Snake, Solid Snake. You are playing as his father. And alright, the story, you still play as Snake, but it's a Snake from the 1960s, in the middle of the Cold War between America and Russia. It's like a James Bond story set in the jungle, and you have to stop a nuclear weapon from being produced, save a scientist, and kill your mentor. And it's all about the emotional struggles he goes through, fighting the comrades of your mentor from the Second World War. And it's all about, betrayal, love, politics, 60s stuff. And it's just a fantastic story, and one that I have to recommend, that if you don't play video games, or, obviously you wouldn't be watching this, but if you don't play video games and you are watching this, you know, to support me or whatever, get a version of this off of YouTube. Watch the game being played, watch the cutscenes, and you will understand why it is my favourite moment in Metal Gear Solid history. It is my favourite next generation game. You know, it is quite frankly the best time I will ever have playing a video game, with an exception of one particular game. So that's the top 5, and I could stop the video there, but if this is my favourite moments in Metal Gear Solid history, I will go through the next ones in game release order. So this is the extras section, the others section, and additional content section. It's a bit like a DVD. So I will go through them in order of game release. Using the ketchup bottle in Metal Gear Solid 1. We're at a point in the game where we've been captured and we've been tortured. And whatever way that you've decided to play the game, you've either resisted the torture, which means a certain cutscene later on in the game, or you've submitted to the torture, which means a different cutscene in the game. But you're locked up in a holding cell along with a quickly decomposing character that you tried to save earlier in the game. You get brought when the guard guarding you goes to the toilet, you get brought a key card that opens doors, which is all throughout the Metal Gear Solid franchise, but you also get brought a ketchup bottle, and your character has been telling another character to take out the guard that is supposedly guarding you. And you know, the character Otacon, who's been rescued by you in the past, say, hour or so, brings you this ketchup bottle, and the guard flushes the toilet. The Otacon character goes away, and you have to work out some way of getting out of the holding cell to continue with your mission. There's one of 2 ways to do it in this specific game. One of them is hide under the bed, which is a bit risky considering if you crawl out while the guard is on his way, he's seen you and he won't open the door to come and look. The best way is to use the ketchup bottle. Lie on the ground, because you can army crawl in this game, in every game apart from Peace Walker, and use the ketchup bottle to make it look like you've bled to death. The guard opens the door, you can stand up, punch his lights out, or, you know, twist his neck, break his neck, and get out that way. It's one of those moments in Metal Gear that you have to think rather than fight, and that's what Metal Gear Solid is all about. The next moment I have, obviously from Metal Gear Solid 1, is taking on the Hind at the top of the communications tower. Now the Hind is a helicopter used in Russia, and it probably still is used to this day. I haven't done my research, this is a list of video game moments. But you're at the top of this tower, you've been taunted by this helicopter for a good 10-15 minutes, you know, so, and all you've got on you is a handgun, a machine gun, a few grenades, and some C4 plastic explosive at this time. You might have a rifle of some description, but you know. So you eventually reach the top of this communication tower, and you found a missile launcher, which is what you need to take him out. And you get out, and this helicopter's firing bullets and missiles at you. You've just got to keep out of the way of them. Looking at him through the missile launcher, because you actually go into first person view, you fire this missile at him, and you have to do it, say, 10-15 more times. And the boss battle is just one of those boss battles where you have to just keep an eye on your radar screen to see where he is when he goes out of eyeshot and start firing the locked-on missiles. Brilliant boss battle, and just one of those moments in gaming that you always remember. Next moment in my favourite Metal Gear history is the revelation after you, like I talked about earlier, still from Metal Gear Solid 1, where you put in the key cards and you've activated this giant walking tank beast type thing, Metal Gear Rex to those people in the know, and you get a call on your radio system, and it's one of your support team saying, "Thank you, you've activated the tank for us and nothing can stop us now." And it's the revelation of that particular character has been your arch enemy for the whole game, and you think, you bastard. But that revelation leads to a long cutscene before the main boss fight, which I mentioned about earlier, which leads to another long cutscene before another boss fight, and eventually the end of the game. But a brilliant twist in the tale if you haven't seen it before. If you have, it's still a great moment to watch, because the character goes, "What the? How did?" And your character is all confused, and it's just brilliant. I'm just going through my list here. This moment is Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 4. Happens in every one of them. Now, I'm not a sadist, but any time the character of Otacon, Hal Emmerich, loses someone, it's devastating for his character. But in a Metal Gear Solid story with Otacon, you are guaranteed to see the man cry. There's nothing wrong with crying as a man, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But the mere fact he cries after you've killed one of the bosses in Metal Gear Solid 1, because he develops Stockholm Syndrome, that's when you fall in love with a captive, or captor, so to speak. You know, that's a bit silly. He cries when his sister's killed in Metal Gear Solid 2, fully understandable. And he cries when Naomi is killed, or Naomi kills herself with the nanomachine suppression injection because she suffers from cancer in Metal Gear Solid 4. Now, it's understandable he cries then as well, because basically a budding romantic relationship was building between the two, and if you're someone like Otacon who doesn't get to feel like that a heck of a lot, you jump at the chance, you become emotionally involved very quickly. It's not a particularly nice moment, but it's one of those moments where the character development, you know, improves, and specifically for Otacon. My next moment I will come to a little bit later on. It's used in all four Metal Gear Solid games. It's also used in Peace Walker and Portable Ops. Well, you can use it. You don't have to, but you can. So on to the Metal Gear Solid 2 moments, and there's not too many of them. The first one is in the first act of Metal Gear Solid 2, and it's the tanker sinking. You've infiltrated this tanker to take photographs of the brand new Metal Gear prototype as Solid Snake to prove evidence of Metal Gear development, which is the main mission in the first part of Metal Gear Solid 2. And what it is the story goes through. You lose sight of the tank of the Metal Gear prototype because Ocelot boards it, steals it, and in process of that, the tanker carrying it sinks to the bottom of the sea. And the cutscene of there is all you have on you is a couple of stun grenades, a handgun and a tranquilizer gun. That's all you've got, so you can't take it on, and the actual gameplay of the scene ends about 20 minutes before the end of the actual scene itself. So that's the thing about Metal Gear Solid. It's basically a movie where you're playing bits here and there. Now you can skip all of these movie bits if you choose to. Excuse me, sorry about that. But if you don't choose to skip, you can see them all. Brilliant stuff. Again, just going through my list here, do bear with me. Right, the next again from Metal Gear Solid 2 is the Harrier battle between the two main shell buildings of the second act of Metal Gear Solid 2, and it's very much like the helicopter battle, the hind battle in Metal Gear Solid 1. You're going up against a 16 Harrier jet, and all you have is a missile launcher, exactly the same one as you used against the hind in the previous game. But you do get a bit of assistance from the helicopter, you know, the friendly helicopter. But all the same, because the Harrier's got more manoeuvrability than the helicopter in the previous game, it's a more difficult battle. And you just aim in this rocket, you fire as many as you can, and eventually you get through that particular boss battle. But it's still brilliant in terms of boss battles, because you're fighting a fighter jet. You shouldn't be able to win a match like that, but you do. And the final moment from Metal Gear Solid 2 that I have on this list is the S3 plan. Now, you find out later on that the S3 plan is something completely different, but the S3 plan in this specific moment, which is difficult to say for some reason, the best moment with regards to this is the bit where you get told what you've been doing all along in the second act of Metal Gear Solid 2 is a basic recreation of what you did in Metal Gear Solid 1. And if you're playing it for the first time and things look familiar, or things that you're doing are familiar, it's because they are. They've actually been set up. You know, you're doing the same sort of boss battles, you're saving people who are dying, you're facing Metal Gear, you're doing all that sort of stuff, and it's exactly the same. And it's demoralising for the player character, but if you played it before, you're thinking, you know, you played it a few times before, and you're thinking, that's bloody clever, you know, that is clever. On to Metal Gear Solid 3, my favourite game of the series. And I'm just going to check my list again, because I haven't put these in order, and to be honest I should have done. Right, the first one I will talk to you about is catching a Tsuchinoko. On your first playthrough of Metal Gear Solid 3, whatever version you've got, you eventually can grab mousetraps. And when you get to a certain bit in the game, in the forest, in the dark, before you go into a secret laboratory facility, you can put the mousetraps down and catch certain things, because you need to catch certain things to eat. You need to eat in the game to keep your stamina up, as in real life, which was a huge step forward in the gameplay of Metal Gear, which is one of the reasons why Metal Gear 3 is one of my favourite games. And if you want infinite ammo for your second playthrough and subsequent playthroughs, you have to catch something called a Tsuchinoko and keep hold of it until the end of the game. You get captured sometime in the game, later on in the game, but if you've kept it alive in your cages, because you've got 3 cages to keep wild animals alive, and one of them can be used for catching this Tsuchinoko thing, and you keep hold of it, but when you manage to catch it finally, and you call your wildlife expert on the radio or your thing to find out if things are poisonous or whatever, and you get told you've caught one of these things, and apparently your main contact who gives you your orders and talks to you over the radio is actually the head of a rare reptiles thing, and he goes absolutely bonkers when you catch it. Yes, you've caught one, yes, save it, do not eat it under any circumstances. And you're thinking, hey, what, man? But if you keep hold of it, you get your infinite ammo for the second and subsequent playthroughs. It's well worth doing. It's quite a funny moment in itself. Speaking of that person you call to find out if things are poisonous or not, she's also the individual you call on the radio to save your game, because at each individual bit that loads, so say like if you go to a different area and it loads, that's a different bit you can save at, and her name is Paramedic. Now obviously these days we know a paramedic being someone who goes to an emergency scene, but back then in the 60s that may not have been the case. A medic comes in by parachute, hence her code name. But when you're Snake and you call paramedic to find out something, say like if you've picked up a mushroom or something and you want to find out it's poisonous or if you have captured an animal alive or dead, and Snake calls her, and it's all to do with Snake going, well yeah, all Snake wants to do is find out how it tastes, and she gets pissed off at it. It's funny as hell. Obviously if you've seen it a few times it's not as funny, but if you watch all of the radio conversations between Snake and Paramedic, it's a good half an hour. But it's a good bit of fun. It's a good bit of fun because she goes, oh, for God's sake, I want to tell you about this stuff, about the history, about the wildlife, and all you want to do is find out how good it tastes. But the comedy between Paramedic and Snake is one of the best things about Metal Gear 3. Just going through my list again. Right, my next favourite bit about Metal Gear Solid 3, some people might call me a bit of a pervert for saying this, but it's actually, you're encouraged to press the button to look. So towards the start of the second act of Metal Gear Solid 3, the longer act, you have to infiltrate the same facility you infiltrated in the first act to make contact with the Russian contact that's been spying on the enemy. But instead of finding the contact you thought you were going to find, you find a beautiful blonde-haired woman. And to immediately walk up to your character after she's killed some enemies, and the first thing she does when she takes off her bike helmet, because she's on a bike, and she does all that crap with her hair, and she's all like that. She moves up to Snake and says, "My name's Eva," and the first thing she does is unzips her top, and she's just wearing a black bikini underneath, and it's like your character just stares at her like that. And you can press a button to like have Snake's viewpoint, and he's not looking at her eyes or anything, he's just looking straight at her cleavage, and it's like, that is legendary, that is beautiful. And you probably do that in real life as well. If some stranger, a beautiful stranger, comes up to you and just goes and she's wearing a bikini underneath, and it's like, well, I'm not looking up there, I'm not looking down there, I'm looking right at those two right there. It's just a brilliant bit of writing. And later on in the game, after your character's gotten to know her and she's gotten to know you, and it seems like you're going to fall in love with her, you don't look down there, you look into her eyes, and it's like, what are you doing, you moron? My next favourite specific event in Metal Gear Solid 3, we're still in Metal Gear Solid 3, this is how much I love this game, is the boss battle against Sorrow. Now, if you've played the game as many times as I have, you know, it's quite an event. There are several ways that this can go. If you've gone through the game, you know, trying to avoid enemy contact and just putting enemies to sleep with your tranq rifle or your easy gun, whatever you're using, or just knocking them out with your CQC like I mentioned earlier, then this particular bit is rather short. Now, the Sorrow is dead, and in this specific bit of the game, so are you, but you don't know that in the character form. Your character doesn't know that, so he's just walking along this waist-high river very slowly, because you can't exactly move very fast in waist-high water. Try it. I personally haven't, but it's got to be difficult. But this ghost, and that's exactly what he is flying about all over the place, firing this weird projectile at you that you can't walk out the way of it just in time. You know, you just dodge it. Like, it goes like that and like that, obviously. But you can. There is another bit to it. If you've gone through the game before this boss battle, killing everyone, and I mean everyone, blasting away, using your CQC to slit the throats of your enemies, killing everyone, then this bit is ages long. You can be there for 5-10 minutes doing this thing, when in reality all you should walk past is your bosses that you've beaten so far. So you're talking the pain, the fear, the end, the fury, and maybe Rykov if you've killed him. But this bit is brilliant, because if you're in your first playthrough, then you go through to the end of this specific bit if you're skillful enough to dodge all of the ghosts that you've killed, or the projectiles that this main ghost fires at you. If you're there, if you get to the end, you get to the bit where the ghost's skeleton lies in the water. Your character dies. Now, you know you're dead if you've played the game before, but you also know something's going on if you haven't played the game before, and you go on your radio, because the characters that you've been talking to all throughout the specific act on the radio are going, "Talk to me, what's going on? Talk to me, Snake! Snake!" And you think, hang on a minute, something's going on here. I'm perfectly alright. I'm walking through this waist-high water. Nothing's going on. And it transpires that you're actually drowning in real life. Because once you've finished the cutscene or whatever, what you have to do is use the revival pill to wake up. Once you've woken up, if it's your first playthrough, or you want to get through to the end of the specific bit to unlock a specific camouflage, and it's one of the best camouflages in the game, not for camo but for what you can do with it, it's just one of the best boss battles, because you don't actually fight. You can't actually lose, because if you have played it before, you've unlocked the camouflage, then what you can do is just dive into the water, stay there until your character dies, and then still use your revival pill. Sorry about that, this is taking longer than I expected. The next moment, and we're still in Metal Gear Solid 3, this is taking miles too long, is your escape on the bike after you've theoretically killed the main boss of the game, or the second main boss of the game, and you're on the bike with this long long blonde haired, beautiful woman, and you're zooming through the ranks of enemies, and it's just an epic bit of the game where you're getting followed by bosses. The boss in the main nuclear weapon tank of the game. We're not quite into walking tank territory yet, but this is a rocket engine on a tank with a nuclear missile strapped to it, and that's how devastating this thing can be. But you're running away from other enemies on a bike, and one of the best things about this particular section of the game, you've got infinite ammo no matter what type of playthrough it is, first, second, third, fourth, and you know, you're encouraged not to kill in these games, but you can't help raising your rocket launcher and firing it at everything because it makes short work. If you are going to play it normally, you know, with kills but without the rocket launcher, you know, there is a gun that you can unlock that has infinite ammo with no reload, so basically you can just sit there holding the attack button, but that's no fun. You just grab hold of the rocket launcher, aim it at the bikes with sidecars, because that's what you're in as well, fire it at everything, and that's just the chase basically to get into the jungle. And I do believe there's a moment before that I've just missed as well. We understand, I've mentioned it very quickly before, but we finally realise, if we haven't before, that this is not Snake we are playing as. We're still in Metal Gear Solid 3. The section where you've been captured, you've been strung up, you know, by your wrists, and one of the other characters who's mad about guns, he can do all of this, you know, all of this tricks with guns and stuff. He suspects the female spy that you're working with, because she's basically playing two roles. One as a spy, one as your guide. And the character Ocelot with the guns, who's a very young Ocelot, he's about 20 years old in the game, I think, maybe even less. And he suspects this woman of being the spy. He has this trick where he juggles 3 guns, and he's loaded 1 bullet into those 3 guns, and he's going, and your character sees that the next bullet to be fired, the next gun to be fired, has the bullet, and the next gun will kill her. And your character's like, he's moved around because your character has been tortured, beat up to buggery. You know, you're completely buggered. Your character moves ahead, nudges this guy with the guns, and he goes off course, and then bang, right in your right eye. Your right eye's been shot out. You have no right eye. I think eye patches are cool anyway. Pirates are cool, but the whole Metal Gear Solid franchise is based on Snake Plissken from Escape to New York, or Escape from New York and Escape from LA. Those are cool movies anyway. But the mere fact that your character gets an eye patch for the rest of the game, and if you go into first person view, you can see the darkness in the right hand side of your first person view. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And then you realise that you're not playing as Snake if you didn't realise it before. I mean, it's the 1960s. How can you be playing as Snake? The Snake story starts in 1995 with Outer Heaven. That's when it starts. The timeline, his timeline, and ends in 2014 with Metal Gear Solid 4. And the final moment from Metal Gear Solid 3 is the boss battle against the boss, your mentor. You have 10 minutes to kill, or stamina kill, which is the kill when you don't lethally kill them, to kill your mentor. Now, there are a number of ways you can go about this. You can probably go out all guns blazing and, you know, try and kill the bitch this way. And she's not a bitch. She's quite noble if you follow the Metal Gear Solid timeline. this boss battle is epic in a certain way, because it's easier to knock her out, punch her out, whatever, and then fire a tranquilizer dart into her, than it is to kill her outright with machine guns blazing and everything like that. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're using a killing gun, now that sounds weird, you know, you can use tranq guns, as I've just said, but you can. She normally runs up to you and dismantles your gun. You can pick it up again easy and try and shoot her again, but it's easier not to. The easiest way to take her out is to run away from her, but make sure she's chasing you. Then you can get in a close quarters combat throw, which takes her down, then use the tranq gun on her head while she's still down. That way you can probably beat the boss in 5 minutes or less. Just absolutely fantastic. And I've said the story of Snake Eater is my favourite moment in Metal Gear Solid. I could watch that being played by anyone and I would not be disappointed. They played it well, obviously. Right, so we're finally on to other games in the series. And this next moment is from Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. Now, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops had mixed reception, basically because it was released for the PlayStation Portable, hence the term Portable Ops. But this game was good. You know, it had cutscenes in the style of a comic, so you saw art and you heard voices in the cutscenes, but on the radio it was just reading, which is absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And the main story of it is let me try and think now. It's set 6 years after Metal Gear Solid 3, so you're Snake. You've been awarded the title Big Boss, but he doesn't feel ready to take the title. You know, he killed his mentor. He feels he doesn't deserve the title. And this game, you know, goes through certain plot lines. I'm not gonna spoil it for those who don't know about it. But it's all to do with, you know, stopping your former unit going renegade, blah 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 blah, and a different version of Metal Gear. So that's basically what I'm going to say about it. For a game that is made for a inferior system, because let's face it, the PSP is a mini PS2, but it's still not anywhere near as good. But it's still a worthy addition to the franchise as far as I'm concerned. On to the final appearance game of Solid Snake. This is just a bit difficult to go through it in specific chapter order as well, so I'm just going to go through them in the order I've written them down. The microwave corridor. Now, I use the term favourite in its loosest possible sense here, because it's not necessarily difficult, but if you've played a game and you're going through the game and you're almost at the end of the game and the end of the franchise itself, but you're there and you're walking through this corridor. You've been told that this corridor will eat away life, and it quite frankly does. If you look at the top left of the screen, if you've got a spare second or two, your life actually drops down, and so does your psych and stamina gauge. But eventually you can't take your eyes off the screen, because the screen is split in half. The top half is what's happening elsewhere. The bottom half is your character moving through this corridor at an increasingly slowly rate. You know, you start off by walking, you're like a zombie, you know, and your character, you know, he's gone for a crap load in the game. Your character is feeling, quite frankly, like shit. And eventually this microwave starts eating at you. The microwave's in there. Basically, you're being cooked. And, you know, there's a lot of people in this world that know what it's like to be cooked. You know, fair play. But you're being cooked, and eventually you get fried enough that you have to start crawling. So that's even worse. And the crawling stage is probably the longest stage of the microwave corridor. And eventually you get down to sluggish crawling. And that's infuriating. And all the while you have to keep tapping triangle on the controller and adjusting your heading using the left analog stick. That is... towards the end of it, you're getting tired. Your finger, I mean, if you're unfit like I am, it's touch and go whether you reach the end or not. But you keep on tapping triangle, and the final bit, you have to tap triangle about 20 times just to get him to go, you know, and it's really slow. But at the end of it, you get a brilliant cutscene, so it's all worth doing. But once I finished that particular bit of Metal Gear Solid 4, I have to save. Because if anything happens to the game, or if it freezes, or there's a power cut or anything like that, I'm like, no, I've got to do it again. So that's why I always save after that particular bit. One of my favourite moments in Metal Gear Solid 4, and Metal Gear Solid as a whole, in the comedy sections. In Metal Gear Solid 4, it transpires that the baby you save after Metal Gear Solid 2 is Olga's daughter, not her son, called Sunny. Now Sunny has been adopted by Otacon, and she's learning very quickly how to use computers, and, you know, being a artificial intelligence analyst and things like that. She's only 9 or so years of age. In fact, she's not even that. She's about 5 or 6, but she's already brilliant in terms of science and things like that, computers. But she's not a very good cook, even though she loves it. And any time Snake makes a comment about the cooking is quite funny in my eyes. There's a specific bit in the briefing for level 2 of Metal Gear Solid 4 where Snake wakes up, and, you know, he's had his marbles taken away from him momentarily. He's been out cold 24 hours due to the experiments being played on in the game. And the first thing he sees is this badly cooked fried egg. It's broken. And he goes, oh, I don't remember the sun being so flat. Oh. And this is the first comment of many about Sunny's cooking. And she brings him another fried egg later on in the game, and it's so with a fork and a cigarette, because Snake loves his cigarettes, as you know. And they try not to hurt her feelings, Otacon and Snake, but she's not a very good cook until later on in the game, where she gets better. There's no doubt about it. But he goes, we grown-ups have to watch our caloric intake. Sorry about that, so I can't really eat it. But then he looks down and sees the cigarette, sees the fag, he picks it up and goes, well, I was looking for this anyway, thanks a lot. And she goes, you're not watching your nicotine intake, you bastard. She doesn't say bastard, but... And she walks back up the stairs to the kitchen in a huff, and Otacon goes to Snake, you shouldn't have said that, Snake. You really hurt her feelings there. And Snake goes, really? Sarcastically. And then she goes, well, you should teach her how to cook eggs then. And Otacon goes, yeah, as if I know how to cook. Which he doesn't. He spent his life in front of a computer screen just like I do. Brilliant moment, funny moment, and any comment that Snake makes on Sunny's cooking is just tops as far as I'm concerned. The next, my favourite moments in Metal Gear Solid 4, and I know this is a long video, but bear with me. If you're a Metal Gear Solid fan and you enjoy my videos, at least you'll want to hear this. As if we didn't know from the events of Metal Gear Solid 3, but Eva from Metal Gear Solid 3 is Snake's mum. And she's called herself in Metal Gear Solid 4 Big Mama. Now, as if you didn't know by that, you find out that Eva is Snake's mum. And, you know, he meets her, and within an hour, I would say, or within 2 or 3 hours at least, she's dead. And it's the first time we see Snake properly lose someone that's close to him. Alright, he killed his brother at the end of Metal Gear Solid 1, but, you know, this is his mum. Can you imagine going through life not knowing who your parents are, to a certain degree at least, finally meeting your mother after 42 years of age, because that's how old Snake is in MGS4. And you know, some part of Snake must have been thinking, well, this is my mum, I look older than she does, because of the storyline, obviously. But you see Snake visibly, there's no change, but mentally he has to be shaken. You know, she reveals who the Patriots are and everything. This big mystery all throughout the game and everything, all throughout 3 different games. You find out who the Patriots are, and it's like, she's one of them. It's like, whoa, that was big. As in the next favourite moment, Big Boss is alive and well at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4. You think you killed him in the second 8-bit original game, which, if you've only played the Metal Gear Solid series, you've only played extremely recently, thanks to the re-releases in Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid HD Collection. But Big Boss is alive, he reveals all, and, you know, he dies at the end of it due to a new strain of fox dye. Fantastic writing, closes all the doors that were open, closes all the open plot lines, and quite frankly deserve to be in my top 5 moments, but my top 5 moments are my top 5 moments. Following the trail, again in Metal Gear Solid 4, you, after the boss battle in level 2, have to follow a trail to find Naomi, the character. Now, if you know where you're going, it's absolutely fine. And if you're watching this and you do get a bit confused about where you're going in that specific episode, you can, I will put a link to a map, a very good map you can use on the computer, in the description, and you can just print it off from there. There's no problem at all. What I will say is, if you don't know the route, you can eventually work out where you've got to go by following the advice from the radio and, you know, your night vision section of your eye. But you get there and it basically ends the level. The next moment is one of my favourite moments in the Metal Gear Solid franchise. I mentioned earlier that Otacon loses someone in each of the Metal Gear Solid games. In GS4 he loses Naomi because of her willingness to die over the reaction to cancer and things like that. But for a brief time, I would say less than 12 hours or so, he had a girlfriend. And in terms of Metal Gear Solid bits, you can tell that this is a guy who's not been loved in that respect, hardly at all. He's very shy, very what's the word I'm looking for? Very familiar with women, as am I. But in this specific moment where he says goodnight to Naomi in the helicopter, you can see they're sort of getting closer to kissing and, you know, making out, whatever, and he always pulls away at the last second because of his politeness, because of his shyness, and it takes her to make the final move. So he closes the door in the helicopter, he leans back on it and goes, oh God, and all of a sudden the helicopter door opens up and she yanks him in to spend the night together. Brilliant, brilliant moment. And when I saw that for the first time, I'm like, yes, Otacon, get in, make her scream. You know, it's like, do it. She's probably going to die anyway. Get in. I was really happy for him. Character. Stupid, I know, but you know. The next moment is very much like the moment in Metal Gear Solid 3 where you're in the sidecar of Eva's motorcycle. You're in the back of the motorcycle, holding onto the back of Eva while shooting with one hand. Now, unless you have the Patriot submachine gun, it's very difficult. Because if you do have the Patriot submachine gun, you can just keep your fingers on the aim and fire buttons and just watch. Because everything else doesn't matter. It's the escape on the bike in MGS4. And my next to last moment, and people will be glad of this, is the Raiden and Vamp fights from Metal Gear Solid 4. After Metal Gear Solid 2, Konami and Hideo Kojima received some complaints about the character of Raiden because we weren't playing as Snake, for one. Secondly, they replaced him with a male character that basically looked like a woman in terms of the appearance. He had long blonde hair, he was rather handsome, you know, but they changed him into a cyborg character, or half cyborg character, that mimicked the ninja from Metal Gear Solid 1, which was a popular character. And the transformation between Raiden of Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 4, like I say, half cyborg, but he'd learnt all these cool ninja moves. So not only could he jump long distances high up in the air, but he was extremely quick, and all he had was his sword he received at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2. Slightly modified, yes, but he could do anything with that sword. And the fights he had with Vamp, who could basically move exactly the same speed through nanomachine manipulation. Just two great fights, one at the end of Mission 2 and one close to the end of Mission 4, if you're not paying attention to what you're doing at that specific time, because they split the screen in the middle. On the right hand side, Raiden versus Vamp. On the left hand side, you're blowing up the mini Metal Gears called Gecko with the big electric rifle. And my final favourite moment in the Metal Gear Solid franchise is basically the game of Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Peace Walker was released 2 years after Metal Gear Solid 4. Again, it was for the PlayStation Portable system, but this time if you installed data before you started to play the game, you could hear radio conversations and cutscenes and all sorts of stuff as well. It was okay. It's a very good game in the least. It's a little bit difficult if you're not playing with a partner. If you're playing with a partner character, it's absolutely fine. It's still difficult. But they've recently re-released it on the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, and you can play online properly with proper controls. They've readjusted the controls so you can play it like Metal Gear Solid 4, and it makes it a darn sight easier. But it's one of those games where it continues on the story of Big Boss. So basically it's another prequel game set after Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. And it's said at the start of the game that you're not exactly sure whether Portable Ops is an actual in-timeline game. Great game all the same. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch a playthrough of Let's Play of Peace Walker, or go out and get Metal Gear Solid HD collection if you are a Metal Gear Solid fan. I strongly recommend you do that anyway. So there's my top 5 moments plus extras of Metal Gear Solid, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.